Hello, I'm Simon McDonald, and you're watching TheReadingRoom.com in conversation with one of the rising stars of Australian crime fiction, Candice Fox. How are you, Candice?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Her debut novel from Random House, Hades, has been described by the Reading Room's members as dark, gritty, and challenging, original and twisted, black and bloody, and one of the most unusual, outstanding, and memorable crime thrillers of the year. And let me remind you, everyone, it's only February. Distilling Hades to a concise four-sentence summary does a narrative a bit of a disservice, I think. But at its core, this is a novel that explores the fine line between good and evil, the various shades of the moral spectrum, and how childhood can impact adulthood. Detectives Eden and Eric Archer are siblings with a dark secret. They're the children of Hades, the man known as the Lord of the Underworld, who disposes of bodies that criminals need erased. Detective Frank Bennett, Eden's new partner, can sense something's not quite right with these two, something he can't quite put his finger on. But the emergence of a curious serial killer who offers the sick and dying hope at a murderous cost takes precedence until the twin narrative threads coalesce. Again, Candice, we're really happy to have you here this evening, and looking forward to talking to you. I'm also joined today by several Reading Room members. We've got Tracy, or two Tracys actually, and we've also got Shelley Ray, and hopefully Carol will be joining us very soon. And for those watching us live or later on, hello future people, thank you for tuning in as well. Candice, to begin with, you wrote an article in the Sydney Morning Herald recently that delved into your childhood, in which you described your home as a revolving door for foster children. And one of my favourite lines of that article, if I could call a line of my favourite from that article, which is, I'm sure, very personal to you, was that you shared your family with Sydney's underworld and learned that people can be evil sometimes, and more often than not, this evil bleeds down the line. Perhaps I was wondering if you could describe a couple of your experiences and maybe how they impacted your writing of Hades in particular. Particularly, I'm interested why you chose fiction as the vehicle to explore the subject of those childhood themes, I suppose. And I'm sure you could have told a compelling non-fiction account too. So why did you choose fiction as the medium to tell your story?
I suppose I've always been aware that what I was dealing with my childhood was sort of confidential, and the different people who came in and out of my life. I mean, there were literally hundreds of them. The 155 that are named in the article or counted for in the article is just when my mother started counting children. So literally hundreds have come through the doorway, and I remember almost none of their names. What I have in my mind is ages and incidents, and there were plenty of them. I mean, it's only as an adult looking back that I can recall different children saying different things to me and doing things around me and reacting in different ways to my mother and father, and then my mother and stepfather, that I kind of go, wow, those were some pretty dark experiences, especially the violence. When you experience violence, as I did a lot of times with very small children, children going for knives, going for each other, repeating things and doing things obviously they've seen their parents do, you sort of wonder, was that violence always inside, or is that violence being copied, So when it comes to a fictional vehicle for that, I suppose I'm just trying to protect those children and their experiences. Yeah, but yeah, I hope that helps.
It does. So did you always want to be a writer? Was writing always in your blood, or was it something you sort of came across maybe later on in life?
No, I was always a writer. I've always been able to come up with ideas and storylines, straight away, and then they just bleed out from there. But as a kid, I was always the kid in the class having my stuff read out by the teacher, and I can recall experiences as a tiny weeny kid sitting in the back of the class just in glee that my story about a caterpillar or something was being read out. And I enjoy the escape of it. you know. In saying that, I do art a lot as well. I mean, I can sit and paint for 6 hours straight without eating or drinking anything, just because I'm escaping into my own mind. But writing has always been the thing that I was natural at, and I always wanted to be a writer.
Are you a good artist? What's your art like? Are you like a, you know, do you have anything like that?
Yeah, no, I'm all right. Lately, it's been sketching and ink work, but I've painted a lot, you know, throughout the years. I always give art as a gift because it's cheap, and people love it. You know, you just go and you get some, you know, materials and you frame it, and then oh my god. Yeah, I think I'm all right. And the art side of things, yeah.
Cool. Well, we're certainly glad you chose to turn your ideas and experiences into this wonderful piece of fiction that is Hades, which is winning plenty of admirers. As I said earlier, we have some of those admirers here with us this evening. I was wondering if any of you guys, any of our reading room members, have a question for Candice. Carol, perhaps we could start with you.
Yeah, Candice, I'll just go a little bit off track and not talk about Hades, but more talk about you and your reading experiences. What do you like to read?
Well, I was a massive reader in my teenage years, simply because I was a brooding teen looking for that escape from the noise and the children and that sort of thing. But I went full on goth when I was 16, and it was just Anne Rice and vampires, and it was all gothic fiction. You know, and I did have the waist length black hair and the boots and that's and that sort of thing. You know, and that influenced my writing at that time. All I wanted to do was write vampire fiction or werewolf fiction and supernatural. I only sort of broke away from the supernatural, you know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and went into crime. As a tiny little kid, I read a lot of true crime, and then I started freaking people out a little bit with my stories, you know, and you know, just because I don't know that. My mother had a massive collection of true crime, and I just picked up one day, and it was Killer Kids, and I thought, I'm a kid, and I read that, and just some of the ideas that I was spouting after that were not very healthy. Lately, it is a joy if I can get into any fiction at all, basically, because I'm doing my PhD, so I have a massive guilt trip if I'm not reading anything that's, you know, not PhD related. Yeah.
Oh, that's a shame. So is Hades your first venture into getting published?
It's my first published novel, but certainly not the first novel I've ever written. I wrote sort of novella-size things as a teenager, and then I sat down and went all out and wrote this massive supernatural crime thing. I think it was 270,000 words or something. Oh. It was huge, and that was just as I was getting out of the Navy, and I crammed every idea I'd ever had in my entire life into this thing, and then I shopped it to every publisher on the earth, and it was rejected by all of them. You know, it did get a lot of attention. A lot of publishers sort of went, this is good, but it's such a mess, you know, send me your next thing. And then I sent 3 other things to everyone I could possibly find, and 200 plus rejection letters later, you know, I wrote Hades. But I sort of, since I put down that massive over-the-top novel, I've just sort of said to myself, well, I want to get published, I want to do this, I want to be a career writer, so I'll just write a novel a year until I get published, so... Yeah.
And when you started to write... Oh, sorry, Simon. When you started to write Hades, did you know then it was going to be the first of a series?
I sort of hoped that it would be the first of a series, but I left it in a way that, you know, it wouldn't be too dissatisfying if I never got another publishing deal. You know, so at the end there, you could very well take it on in your mind about how these two characters carry on. But when I'd written it, I went the next year on to writing something totally different. I was in the middle of an apocalyptic novel set in Sydney when I actually got the deal for Hades, and I was just writing for fun at that point. There was aliens and things, and I was just really enjoying it. So I'll hope to continue that one day. But yeah, for now it's one book at a time on the Bennett and Archer series.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot more from you in the future.
Oh, thanks.
Sounds like there's a lot of stories to come.
Yeah, they never stop, which is good.
That is good.
Sorry, Simon, your microphone's a bit funny.
I'm sorry. I was just asking if Shelley Ray had a question she'd like to ask.
Is anyone else experiencing... Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, hi.
It can get a little bit ticky in here, I guess. I was wondering about the sort of research you ended up doing for Hades. Was there something in particular that really, at some part of the research that really interested you, or something you found out that you really enjoyed?
Well, I started the idea for Hades with the idea of a guy running a tip. Because I'd been inspired by a guy who was running a tip near where I lived. So I lived out the back of the Sunshine Coast in the hinterland because I was trying to save money while I was at uni, and just in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't have any garbage collection. And what I would do was drop my garbage off every week at this little makeshift tip. And there was this fat guy there with a ponytail, and he used to hang out with all these grisly, dirty characters, and they'd gotten all their furniture together, and they always just sit and had coffee, and it was all rescued furniture. And I thought, this guy is really cool, And I thought, how could he hide bodies here? Or, I got to thinking, I'd just like to use this guy in some way, and I don't know how. And then coincidentally, a friend started working at a tip. And, he was complaining about how, people think you just drive up in the trucks and chuck the stuff on the ground, but it's complex layers of, different stuff that'll trap chemicals, and then there's rubbish, and then you compress it, and then there's more layers, and there's, all this sort of chemicals and stuff. And I sort of started thinking to myself, wow, that sounds really, nobody really knows about that, and there's all this acid involved, and, wow. So I looked into that, and that was just, that was where it sort of began. Yeah, the research, I sort of tried to focus more on the actual characters than what they were doing, and I've hidden weak areas of research, behind characters. So, yeah, I enjoyed that. Anything that I sort of needed for this book was just a Google search away,
You hinted you had a story about a church.
Oh yeah, it was really funny. One of the things I like to do when I'm researching is I like to take photos. So I was living in Queensland, but I'd set the book down here in Sydney, and I came down on a bit of a research trip while I was visiting my parents, and my stepdad drove me around, and I went to the church that's featured in the end of the novel, and I I started taking some covert photos, and then I thought, I'll just ask the priest if I can. And I went up to the priest and I said, is it all right if I take some pictures of the inside of your church? Because I'm writing a novel and it's in it. And he said, oh, wow, that's so exciting. What happens? And I said, it burns to the ground. And he said, oh, well, these things will happen. I thought, how understanding of you, Yeah, so the photos, and then, one of the things I do just as a habit is I come home and I flick on the crime channel, and I always have notebooks around, so I've got the crime channel on when I'm cooking, and, it's sort of in the background while I'm reading, and I'm half listening to it while I'm researching, and then if I hear anything that's particularly interesting, like a poison that was used, or a method that was used to break someone down, to find someone for a crime, I always note it down in case I need to use it in the future. It's just relaxing. I just like having, those 80s crime documentaries with the guy and he's like little did she know she would never see them again, you know, and I love that. It's cool.
Is there then a crime fiction novelist, perhaps even an Australian one, that you are certainly influenced by or you want to emulate?
I would love to be as good as Peter Temple is at dialogue and male interactions and, you know, this sort of thing. I'm, you know, having spent time in the Navy, I'm well versed on how men talk to each other and their relationships and things like that, you know. But Peter Temple's just got this way with it that I just, you know, you're sort of reading and you go, yeah, that sounds about right. That's what men are really like. Yeah. So, yeah, probably him. I've read a lot of John Connolly. He's not Australian, but love his work as well. And I'm really, yeah, the true crime. You know, and I don't really know the authors of the true crime, but I'm, you know, one murder that I'm interested in after another. I'm just making my way through Australian true crime at the moment.
I actually have that Killer Children book on my bookshelf.
Do you? Killer Kids? Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, you know, I think I read that when I was 7 or something. I just devoured it. I don't even know who the author is, but some of the stuff in there. I went to school the next day and went, you know, there was this girl and she hated her parents and all my friends are just, oh. And they were reading the Chronicles of Narnia at the time, you know. Yeah.
When a child kills.
Yeah. But there are so many different, you know, versions of it. I'm just fascinated.
You got that without even moving, Shelley Ray. I'm impressed.
Have you seen my bookshelves?
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's why we're impressed. Candice, you were saying before we went online that the book went through about 14 or 15 edits before it got to the stage it's in now. Is the finished product at all recognisable as compared to the start? Were they, you know, major changes? So I guess the heart of it would still be the same.
It was very much the same. It's from very, very first draft ever to now, it's probably got an extra 30,000 words on it. Probably because there were aspects of character in my mind, particularly with Jason Beck, that, you know, they were in my mind, but they weren't in the reader's mind, you know. But I actually got, the reason it's gone through so many edits is because I got a publisher for it in the UK, in the Isle of Man, actually. You know, that was years ago. And he was going to publish it in physical format, an ebook format, and then ran out of funding for it. But we were set to go. All we needed was a cover, you know. So that was, you know, about 4 or 5 edits, and then that all fell in a heap. And I took it back to the Australian market and shopped it around and edited it a couple more times, and then a couple more times when it was accepted, you know. So it builds up. But it's, you know, you can go through a whole edit and it would just be, you know, spelling and grammar, and people will go, is this joke really that funny? And I'll say, yes. You know, do you really want to keep this? Yes. You know, or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, so it never really changed that dramatically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, more finessing than made the structural changes. So, okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Can I just ask Candice before the second Tracy jumps in? How do you get past the self-doubt as a, you know, when you're a writer? And I've tried to dabble in writing myself in the past, and I haven't tried to publish anything. So, you know, that's you know, it's a very personal story. But like I often find that, you know, approaching publishers and things like that, trying to find an agent, whatever, however you do it is the easy part. It's getting past the self-doubt in terms of, you know, writing something that you're happy with, that you're happy to try and, you know, give out to the world. How do you get past the sort of self-doubt that a lot of, you know, aspiring authors, I'm sure, feel?
It's interesting that you say that, because the writing part wasn't my hard part. My hard part was shopping it around, you know, because it's the rejection that, you know, I've always found it joyous to write something, but it's when you send it out, you know, I've sent it out to 50 publishers at a time, and they sort of say, oh, we'll get back to you, you know, 3 months or something, and then almost like clockwork, you get all of the thank you for submitting, but you're rubbish. Thank you for submitting, but you're rubbish, you know. And then over the next week, while they all come in, you go, oh, I suck. You know, that was the hard part for me. But anyone out there who's doubting their own writing should know that that's the first thing that's going to damage your writing. You know, you have to write fearlessly and you know, joyously to be able to write anything. If you're not enjoying it, then it's not going to be enjoyable to read, I find.
And can I ask, are you one of those writers who keeps their rejection letters? I often read about writers who keep them all in like in a folder so they can go back, you know, when they've reached whatever success they reach, and they sort of can reflect on you know, where they started. Are you one of those writers who sort of keeps all their rejections?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not a nice part.
No, I wish that I had kept some of them, but mainly I just printed them out and cried over them so much that they dissolved in my hand. No, no. Most of them were automated. This is the thing. They were just, you know, dear Candice, thank you for submitting, blah blah. You know, it's just automated, so it wasn't really worth it. But I suppose when you don't know that you're ever going to be published, keeping them, you know, wouldn't be very enjoyable for me. But and you know, if you're in the game long enough, as I was, they start calling you to reject you, which was.
Is it better or worse?
Well, it's kind of embarrassing because my agent, when my agent, you know, was asking me when I was initially her client, she said, "Do you know any of the publishers in Sydney?" And I said, "Well, they might tell you that I was the girl that cried on the phone every time they called me." And one of them actually did. She called him and she said, "I know that girl. She cries all the time." So it's embarrassing, you know, not like, but okay, you know, yeah. So it's sometimes it's worse, you know, than just receiving the automated. I can spot the word "unfortunately" in an email from 50 yards, though, so that's a skill I hope to one day use. You know.
I think no matter what you do in life, you always get those emails with "unfortunately" in them, so it's not just shared by authors, but
yeah, sticks out.
I got one from NetGalley the other day. It didn't make me cry, but I was disappointed.
Yeah.
You should work in film and TV. Trying to get an idea floated, it's like rejection, rejection, rejection.
Yeah, I think it makes you strong though, you know, and it's one of those you can the amount of rejections that you've had when you finally get there, you know, you wear it like armor. You say, "Oh, I had 200 plus," you know, and then you speak to other authors and they say, "Oh, I had 3," and you go, "Yeah, all right." Go over there.
I should make a badge.
Yeah. So.
Does that armor help? Does that armor help then when you get reviews start to come out and some of them aren't so great?
Yeah, I am very fortunate that I haven't had any sort of really scathing ones or anything. I've had a couple of, you know, little comments, you know, that have sort of said this could have been better or that could have been better. But oh no, I've kept them all. I've kept all my reviews, all your reviews that you gave me. I put them in a scrapbook, and they're duplicated because my parents are all keeping them as well, and my brothers and sisters. So, you know, everyone's got their own personal scrapbook, which is really weird because there'll be about 11 scrapbooks to hand down to our future generation.
But we're published.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So. Yeah.
Tracy, the second Tracy, as we were going to call you, do you have a question for Candice?
Yeah, Candice, I just wanted to say that hopefully some of those 200 letter writers are regretting their actions now and a little bit sorry about it.
It'd be good. It'd be good.
Yes, your success speaks for itself.
Well, thank you.
It was really interesting to hear about your Gothic voracious reading as a teenager. I too am a big fan of Anne Rice. I think she's a fantastic writer, and also a lot of people don't realise she has a bit of a historical fiction slant to her. But I just wanted to ask you more about how you channel that dark side when you're writing characters like Hades and Eric and Eden, and I even saw an article in the newspaper where you have your elbow on a skull, and I just wanted to ask, how do you channel that? Do you go into dark writer mode? Do you listen to music to help you channel the crime writing, or does it just come to you? Because you seem to be such a happy, chirpy person. How do you deal with all that death and destruction?
Yeah, it's pretty funny because the first time I came around the corner to meet my publisher, Bev Cousins, at Random House, I walked upstairs and came around the corner and she said, "You're so cute!" And I said, "Oh, thank you." I'm a happy, cheerful person. I just have this mind where I just am constantly thinking about different innovative ways to kill people. I don't know what it is. It's like a hobby or an interest, or I would never perpetuate it or anything, of course, or ever wish it on anyone. It's just an interest. But I've really had to. Some of the criticism that I got across the novels that I wrote before Hades was that I was too dark and too full frontal, and I think that was coming out of the true crime background that I have. And I sort of have to say to myself sometimes, my aim is more to, as I get older as a writer, is to disturb people more than horrify them. And there's been some texts that have really disturbed me. And the way I measure it is, like, for example, the film Snowtown, one of my favourite films of all time. I watched that and went, oh my God. And then, 3 or 4 days later, I was in the shower and it just popped into my mind and I went, oh my God. And that's the long-lasting disturbance that I really aim for. So sometimes I have to tell myself to be subtle. But that...
I love that movie Snowtown as well. None of my friends and family will watch it because they know the true crime story behind it. But actually, you don't see that much compared to a lot of the action films we see today. You don't see much of what happens. It's the acting and it's the characters. It's what goes on between the characters that is so horrifying. I mean, a slap horrified me and gave me goosebumps more than 100 people being shot in another action movie that might be a blockbuster. But Snowtown is just a great example of Australian acting, as Hades is a great example of Australian writing. I really think we need to try and support it. Obviously,
thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it's really it's really interesting. I can't I have never questioned what's in my mind until I got published and people said, why is that in there? So it's only the last couple of months that doing interviews and that sort of thing I've been discovering myself as a person, and just started having to say, I just think murderous thoughts all the time. I have no reason for it. I just do. So.
There could be like a really chirpy serial killer coming up in the next one of the future books.
Yeah.
Do you listen to any music when you write, Candice?
No, I don't. I like noise though, so I will often write in cafes. Just because I can look around, there's different people, they're all making different noise. I could write in the middle of a construction zone. Silence weirds me out. Just because as a teenager I was writing in a very loud house, screaming children and doors banging and people yelling across the house at each other and this sort of stuff. So I quite like a lot of noise. My local library is surprisingly noisy. So, and I always sit next to someone weird, or they sit next to me, and they feel what's going on. But so not music, but clamour.
The Crime Channel and
yeah. I can't listen to the Crime Channel though because I get that narrator in my head. Tonight on Desperate Housewives, I start writing.
Well, thank you.
Well, we're just about out of time, I think. So I just wanted to say thank you to Candice. Thank you so much for joining us today and chatting about Hades and your
Thank
writing
you so
process. I hope you had a great time. It's certainly been very informative. You've also got Eden coming out in December this year. Is that correct?
That's
the
right.
To Hades, yeah.
I've got some.
Anything you can tease us about Eden, or is it all?
Well, but I've just got feedback on it from the agent and the publisher, and they just absolutely raved about it. You know, they both. My agent called me, and my publisher emailed me, just oh my god, and that's mainly because the ending to it is. You know, I wrote the ending and went, oh my god, you know. But I've taken license to be as dark as I wanted in Eden, so it's quite scary, and I really hope you enjoy it. But it's just gone in for the first draft, so yeah. Unexpected things are happening, and then the backstory is Hades' life, basically, and that was me answering requests about everyone who just loves Hades, and I thought we need to know more about this man. So.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions, whether he would turn up more in future ones, because he was a background character, but he had so much going on. Yeah,
Hades is there to stay. He'll always be there to stay. But then. Each I'm hoping that each book will feature a backstory, and in book 2, Hades gets that spotlight.
Yeah. Do you have a plan for how many books?
Just as many as they'll let me write. Yeah.
On that note about Hades and about delving into his background and how that's what fans were clamoring for, do you find is it difficult trying to balance, you know, what the fans want and the story that you want to tell?
I mainly try to ignore what fans want because otherwise I think I'll get tricked into writing, you know, for the, you know, I really don't want to get tricked into writing for the market, but you know, when people started telling me how much they're in love with Hades and actually asking me questions about Hades, where did he grow up and what was his childhood like, and I thought, I don't know, let's find out, you know. It just got me to thinking about it, and I thought, who is this man, where did he come from, you know, what's happened to him to make him the way he is. So yeah, he'll feature in that, and then hopefully in future novels we'll have opportunities to go into in other people's pasts, but I didn't want to run out of, you know, because any writer doesn't know how long they're going to last as a writer, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to go back into his past, because I love Hades too. He's a great guy.
Me too. I love his scrap metal animals. They're just amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Well, again, Candice, thanks so much for joining us today, and to our Reading Room members who are joining us in the conversation too, Shelley Ray, Carol, and the two Tracys, thanks for joining us, and for anyone watching live, thank you very much for joining us, and from all of us here at the Reading Room, happy reading for now and the future.